Are we on? Are we live?
I'll play you. I'll break you. I'll break you. I'm for a night.
It's time for Two Guys and a Beer. Sit back and join the guys as they turn up a cold one and talk about sports, politics, and current events. Nothing fancy, just two politically incorrect guys who aren't trying to change the world or get rich quick. They're just here for the beer.
Welcome to another episode of Two Guys and a Beer, and I'm your host, Scott, along with my co-host, Mick Nasty.
Here we go. Here we go.
And as we like to say, school is in session. All right, well, on this episode, this is episode number 11, and today is September the 11th, 2013. 2013. 12 years since that infamous day that was only overshadowed by the infamous day in 1941. That's the only other day of infamy that that would have been come to mind. 2001, I remember exactly where I was. In fact, I had lunch today with the friend that I was eating breakfast with that day. We brought it up again, as we do every year. And where were you? Where were you in 2001?
I was in 8th grade, and I was going in between classes, actually going from my English class to my science class. It was Miss Daniels to Miss Slater, and Miss Daniels' son, Jay, walked in the room, and we had no idea at the time in her class. He walked in the room and was telling his mama something, and I couldn't really hear him, and I said, what's going on, what's going on? And emphatically she said, war. First thing she said to me was war. And I went, oh my God, what? So I immediately went to the next class period. She had the TV in the middle of the room. It was on, however much longer. And then we watched the second plane hit.
Pretty much all day.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first plane had hit, and, I saw the tower smoking, and then I watched the second plane hit.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, that's something that it will never leave my mind. I was actually watching a documentary today on SportsCenter about a guy who was in the Trade Center, and who, it was a heroic story of him saving people's lives. And I was sitting there watching it, and they showed the second plane hit again, and it just brought back that flood of emotions that I felt at that time. As an 8th grader, I was very confused and really had no idea what to think about it. But as an adult now, I look at it, and the emotions that I felt then are similar, but now I'm a lot more. I don't know how to explain the emotions that I feel now when I see it than what the emotions that I felt then, because, like I said, I was confused more than anything. Yeah, at that time I thought we were invincible. Who would do that? Nobody. I'd never seen or heard anything like that. You hear the history lesson of Pearl Harbor, but you don't. There's no equation there. Yeah,
you got no frame of reference.
No frame of reference. So.
Yeah.
Looking at it now, it was emotional to me,
Well, what's crazy today, there's an imam, which is a Muslim equivalent to a Muslim preacher, I guess, who has a church, who is the head of a Muslim church in Washington.
Do they call them churches?
No, synagogues or whatever they call them. Mosque, Muslim mosque, which would be a Christian church. It's the same differences. But just to give you a frame of reference, but they applied for a permit to do a Million Muslim March in Washington D.C. to show that they're being discriminated against and stereotyped on this day, especially this day, every year. And it's so outraged a lot of people around the world, especially in the motorcycle community, that they formed a counter-protest called the 2 Million Motorcycle ride. The Muslims had a permit. The Park Service gave them a permit to have a demonstration on the National Mall.
But you don't need a permit to peaceably assemble.
Well, you do if you're on the Park Service property.
Okay, so you need it there, but
but you can ride
in a public forum,
right? But there's a specific ordinance in Washington that says you do not have to have a permit to parade on the streets as long as you do it peacefully and you obey all the traffic laws. So the motorcyclists, since they couldn't get a permit because the Park Service turned them down, really all they wanted was a rolling permit. They wanted the Park Service to block the red lights and let them ride through town. Park Service says, no, this is a weekday. You're going to disrupt too many things. So they said, okay, we're coming anyway. So approximately 800,000 motorcyclists showed up. And that's the Park Service estimate. I don't think it, judging by what I could see, I don't think it was quite that many. But I imagine it was well into the six digits. So even if it's over 100,000, even if they grossly underestimated, 200,000 motorcyclists rolling through D.C. on a weekday just shut that town down. And there was only I think they only estimated 3,000 or 4,000 Muslims at the most.
To be honest with you, I don't know what to think about that. I mean, I don't know if that's them showing patriotism. I know motorcyclists are very very much into the patriotism atmosphere.
Yeah, we're patriotic. You're
very
right.
patriotic. But, I start thinking about the Muslims and how you're talking about how they're discriminated against. And then when you think about the history lessons of, in the 1940s with Asians and how they weren't just discriminated against. They almost were put in concentration camps.
Well, they were concentration camps on the West Coast to basically keep, because they didn't know at that time how deep it was and you got to understand when you're fighting for survival and you're fighting for your way of life, sometimes you have to suspend a lot of civil liberties that you would ordinarily not want to suspend.
What's that famous quote by Ben Franklin? Those who will give up civil liberties for protection deserve.
No. It says he that will give up
you should
freedom.
Google it before you massacre it.
Well,
but he who will give up his basic civil liberties to gain safety deserves neither.
But see, here's the thing. That doesn't apply in this situation.
I'm not saying it
and
does,
that's not
but
what he meant.
I'm just talking about, and you can't say what he meant. You don't know this guy. But
and historically, you could read the historical record and tell what he meant. That's not a valid statement. So
we should read it because
we know exactly. I've read it several times. I know what he was meaning. He was meaning don't give up the fight for liberty just because you want to be safe and secure in your home, because the fight for liberty is more important than your personal safety and security. That's what he meant. So it doesn't apply in this situation.
Civil liberties.
No, he wasn't talking about civil liberty. He was talking about your safety and your being. Don't be afraid to go against the crown, because the crown will ultimately take away your rights anyway.
I don't think he just meant the crown. I think as a forward-thinking guy. But I think as a forward-thinking guy, he knew that you can't allow people to just put things into play to say we're going to protect you and this is why we're doing it, and then you just say okay, because it may take away from your rights as a human being and as an American.
Well, listen,
and I'm not saying in the 1940s again. I'm not saying that was wrong.
And it doesn't apply today to the Muslims, because what we're talking about, the protest or the demonstration in Washington D.C. And this imam has not been supported in the Muslim community. It's not like they say, oh yeah, he's doing a good thing. He is a radical Muslim, and he's just you got to understand that even 12 years later, emotions are still high. Can you imagine
like I said,
in 1953 had the Japanese community said, well, you know what, we're gonna be out there, we're gonna protest in Pearl Harbor. Son,
that's what they didn't do. I mean, exactly. That's what my point was, getting to that. But we got off on another topic. But I mean, I can definitely understand that. Emotions are still high. I just talked about earlier how it was emotional for me watching that today, and that's what I was getting at. That they're talking about how they were discriminated against, but you didn't see the Asian community coming out 12 years later and making some kind of protest in Washington. That was what my point was going to get to.
Right. All right. I understand what you're saying. That probably was at 8th grade. It was even traumatic for me. So I can imagine.
Where you were eating breakfast.
I was eating breakfast at the Waffle King.
What time was it?
It was 8:45.
It had to be early because that was my first block period.
It was 8:45 when 8:46 when the first plane hit, right around there. And your mama came out to the Waffle King and told us about it, and we left and hunted the TV, and then I was there watching, of course, when the second plane hit.
And it was absolutely the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
It was. Well, listen, this is the part of the show where we talk about the premise of the show, and the premise is two guys and a beer. When the beer is gone, the show is over. So,
which I have a pretty good idea. We were talking about name changes the other day.
Yeah, we were, and
after we got off our giggle fit the last show, we kept talking about it, and I had a pretty good idea of what we should call the show.
And that, usually after the beer ends, that's when the best ideas come along. So, what was your idea?
I felt like we should call the show, since our last name is Cochran, we should call the show Two Cocks and a Beer. Two cocks and a beer.
That's kind of funny because in high school, you know what they used to call me? Cochran.
And everybody called me Cochran.
And it's amazing because we didn't go to the same high school. We went to the same schools, different in different cities.
There are people today who still do not call me by my first name.
Oh, me too. People in my high school still call me Cochran.
I mean, people who didn't even go to high school with me call me Cochran. Earlier today, or actually I was just at a restaurant eating, and I saw a girl that I knew, and I said, "Hey, how are you?" And she said, "Hey, Cochran, how are you?" Literally, I mean, my voicemail for a long time, was, "This is Cochran."
Yeah.
I didn't, Jason was not.
Two cocks and a beer.
Two cocks and a beer. Just play on words. You like what I did there?
I did. All right, well, that's where we'll start. I'm Big Cock.
And I'm Bigger Cock.
No, if we're going to do that, you got to be Little Cock. So
can I be Cock Junior?
Junior Cock.
Junior Cock.
Junior Coxman. Yeah, there's a lot we could do with that.
Just speaking of our last name.
Speaking of that, I submitted our show to iHeartRadio today, and we probably won't get on. But,
well, maybe we will.
Who knows? But that would be kind of funny. If this is the first show that they listen to screen us.
It always
the cock guys.
It amazes me as the last names of people. Just speaking of our last names, people had last names of what they did, like Smith, or whatnot. Where did our last name come from?
We were Coxswain.
Were we the guy who walked around naked back in the day?
You know what a coxswain is? Coxswain. It's a nautical term. A coxswain is the person in charge of the boat, navigation and steering. Well, basically the boat captain, boat servant.
So was there a guy who ran away from a boat, or
no? I mean,
it just kind of came to Cochran, or
in the rower in the rowing. In the rowing term, the coxswain is the guy who sits in front, and the stern, the bow, the stern, or whatever, and verbally controls the steering.
So we weren't.
Hard.
So we weren't the guy who actually had to row the boat.
No. And what's funny about this is your grandfather, my father, your Popples, as he was called, was the chief petty officer in the Navy, and in the Royal Navy, that's what a coxswain was. A chief petty officer. Now, how is that for coincidence?
That is ironic.
That is very ironic. So, all right, well, enough of that. We'll start with Coxswain and Two Coxswain and a Beer next episode maybe. But right now we need to give a nod to.
We don't have to change the name from Two Guys and a Beer, but I do like the whole this is Cock and this is Cock Junior. Maybe I don't know.
This is Big Cock and
change
Cock
it
Junior.
Up. All right, I still want to go to a doctor that pats me on the belly, so whatever.
And if you didn't hear that show, you should listen to episode 10, Your Doctor Hates You. And it's on Spreaker.com. All right, well, right now we're going to take a moment and pause for a word from the guys over at GF6. That was your cue, guys. GF6. Well, it would help if I manipulated the controls right. Let's go back one time. Let me cue them up one more time. The guys with GF6.
GF6.com. We are everything Xbox. Game forums, game reviews, cash prize tournaments, Madden leagues, podcasts, movie reviews, and more. You can buy games in our game market for 80% less than retail. You can sell your games in our market and get fair market value. List all your games for free. Create your own gamer profile. Post your videos and get your hands on exclusive GF6 gear like the Dirty Hoodie to show off your GF6 pride. Join the the GF6 Nation today. Go to www.gfsix.com. GF6. Join GF6 Nation.
And check out GF6. They're an affiliate of ours, show affiliate. And in fact, they do our intros and outtakes.
Talking about games and video games, in about 7 days, probably one of the most monumental games of the past 3-4 years will be coming out, Grand Theft Auto 5. And I will have my PlayStation hooked up in the room that we watch TV, and I will play it,
dude. I remember
until I beat it.
I remember you in video. You know, dude, it's just crazy the amount of time you waste on video games.
I mean, you know, I played Call of Duty for a long time. I don't play it anymore, and I haven't played video games in a while, for probably 2 or 3 months now. But
when you get into it, it's an orgy of time wasting.
Well, it's not time wasting, bro. It is an actual. It's a storyline. It's like a movie you are in control of, is what it is.
All right,
and Grand Theft Auto is cool because you get to kill hookers and race cars and run from the cops and
do all the things you never really could do in real life.
Exactly, and it's awesome. It's awesome.
All right, well, just think about when the technology advances to where you have holograms inside your Google Glass, and you're able actually to interact. And speaking of that, did you know they created a humanoid robot that falls in love? They were able to do this in the laboratory, and it fell in love with a female attendant.
Mm-hmm. Was she hot?
Well, it looked like she was, but here's the thing. The programming on the robot screwed up so bad it would not let her leave. It would block the door until 2 assistants, she was able to take her cell phone. This is real shit. She was able to take her cell phone, call her assistants. They had to come in and basically reach in the back and disable. It's just like the shit you see in the movies.
So basically it's saying that love is possessive.
Oh, I guess, but it's saying that the robot, there's still a ways, Maslow, that wasn't Maslow. Who was the guy that had the prime directive?
Moore's Law?
No. The science fiction writer with the prime directive of the robot law number 1.
iRobot, yeah, iRobot.
Yeah, but the science fiction writer said that robot law number 1 was do not harm.
Yeah, that was iRobot.
That's before that though.
iRobot is the first law of the robotics is a robot cannot harm a human.
3 laws of robotics.
Yeah, that was iRobot.
But it was Isaac Asimov.
Asimov
came around. Robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come into harm. A robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings, except when such order would conflict with the first law. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law.
And in iRobot, what eventually happened was there was a robot who came along and evolved those laws and said that for me to hold up these laws,
I have to get rid of humans.
I have to put humans under my control.
Right.
Because humans harm themselves.
But I mean, so that robot basically skipped all that shit and just violated all 3 laws. Evidently, it wasn't programmed with those laws, but that just shows
That's
you how.
That's a great movie, by the way.
iRobot.
I remember when I first saw it, I fell in love with it. I absolutely fell in love with that movie. I still watch it to this day. We talked about top movies before. And I don't remember if you told me what movie would be your favorite, but what would be your favorite movie?
I really do like
Unforgiven.
I like Unforgiven and the westerns, those type movies.
So a movie you can only watch. You only have 3 movies in your movie collection, and there's no way you could. And you have to watch this movie every day.
Man, I'm going to watch. It's going to have to be a funny movie. It's really going to have to be.
You have to have a comedy in there.
It's going to have to be a humorous movie. Animal House, I can keep laughing at Animal House all day long. And
the first movie for me is always going to be probably, 6% of the time, every time, it's going to be the Tim Robbins movie with Morgan Freeman.
Shawshank.
And then V for Vendetta's in there. The Matrix is in there.
I can't watch The Matrix anymore.
Oh, I love that movie.
After I've seen it once, it's done.
Talk about a movie that I fell in love with. The first time I watched that movie, I swear I watched it 7 times in a row. It was at our old house. I watched it it was ungodly how many times
it had a good twist. I liked it. It had a real good twist.
I mean, it was a cool take on the world and what the world could be.
Yeah.
You know, we could all think we're living in this type of world, and then in reality, we're just plugged in, and we need to get unplugged to really see what the world is. You know, it's all a computer system in that world. It's all the Matrix. I mean, it blew my mind. It blew my mind.
Hey, and speaking of blowing your mind, have you been checking out the Twitter page lately? I see where we're getting a few more followers.
Yes, sir.
And wanted to kind of give a shout out to some of the new Twitter followers there. And in case you hadn't been following us, check us out on Twitter. It's beer_guys. Add us, and we will mention you right here on the show. And don't forget, we also have availability for Bobby Cox in April. You can play with Jason and or Cox Jr. at in Helen, Georgia, beautiful Helen, Georgia, Alpine Helen, Georgia, and you can play in April with Bobby Cox and Jason. It's only $175, so send us a tweet or Facebook us and let us know you're interested. And that's facebook.com/2guysandAbeer.
And when you really think about what would you spend $175 on otherwise, having a day out playing golf, which is one of the most beautiful sports in the world, because you're in nature and you're not playing anybody else but the golf course and yourself, and you get to play with a legend like Bobby Cox. $175, that's nothing. That really is not bad.
All right, Jason, tell us about Miley Cyrus's new video, The Wrecking Ball.
I mean, I really don't know too much about it besides the fact that she's naked, and you can't really see much. You know, she's naked, and you can tell she's naked, obviously. And she's the part I keep seeing is her on a wrecking ball, naked, swinging back and forth.
Oh, there's a lot of sexual references in there.
And what I was telling you earlier is, to me, when you look at Miley Cyrus when she is, long hair, brown. She looks like that girl that you would want to take home to mom, like she can sing, she's beautiful, she's just incredibly gorgeous. And now when you see Miley Cyrus, she's that girl that you wouldn't take home to mom, but you'd take out on a party and have a great time with, Yeah. The first girl you'd be like, okay, I'd take her home to mom and we could have a good time and she would be a girl that I could marry or whatnot. But the new Miley is that girl that you'd take out and never show her to mama unless, you're the firstborn son and mama loves whatever you do.
Whatever you do. Hey, well, while we're talking about it, big shout out to Kenzo Slice 1. She's our latest follower on Twitter. And Mulla Lisa. Mulla Lisa is following us.
Sometimes I get on Twitter and I see people's names and I just want to go, what
the
fudge were you thinking? Holy fudge.
All right, well, you follow us and add us, and maybe we'll give you something free. When we got to give away free shit to get people to add us on Twitter. All right, so Miley Cyrus and the Wrecking Ball, it pretty much was a wreck, I think. It's just a pretty neat, it's a catchy little tune. I listened to it, and I didn't look at the video just to see Miley naked, because I'm Billy Ray's age. So.
Somebody told me, I actually, speaking of Twitter, I saw a Twitter person put the other day, they were putting the lyrics up, and people seem to love the song, but when they see the video, they're just like, oh, Miley, you're doing too much. This is just too much.
You went too far.
But in my opinion, Miley, you do what you want to do. As long as you're selling records, I don't give a shit. That's your business. If you want to get it naked and get on a wrecking ball. And
one thing I was surprised to see, I didn't see a lot of tattoos on Miley. I don't remember. I would have thought. I remember watching that, thinking, she's got pretty nice skin. She didn't art it all up. But not that I'm having anything wrong with tats, but she just didn't art it all up.
She's a
maybe she hadn't done it yet.
I feel like this is all just a play. This is a scream saying, "Look at me, look at me." This is not. I know she got on for a while. She did some hardcore drugs, or not hardcore, just some crazy drugs, and they videotaped her getting high for the first time and things like that. And I almost feel like it's just a cry out, like, "Look at me, look at me, look at me," because for so long she was that Disney character. And speaking of Disney characters, the only one that came out without a drug problem seems to be Justin Timberlake.
Justin's doing I saw the video that we put on that you put on Facebook with the end zone dances.
Jimmy Fallon, yeah.
Yeah, Jimmy Fallon video. Check that out on our Facebook page if you want to see some cool end zone impressions. So Jimmy Fallon's a pretty funny guy. I like watching some of his stuff. Hey, speaking of nasty, which cool is nasty is the new cool.
Sometimes, here's what I'm going to do from now on. I didn't mean to cut you off, but me and you both tend to get it repetitive in things we say.
No,
like last episode, I noticed what I said a lot was, "Here's the thing.
Here's
my thing," and you did something like
Speaking of,
no, you did all right, so or something like that.
I did all right, so.
And today, your thing is speaking of. Because the last 3 segues, that's how we transition. You go, speaking of.
Yeah, I do that a lot.
Yeah, well,
how do you get from one to the other? Just hard cut?
Moving on.
Then I'd say moving on a lot. So, hey, did you see? So then I go see. Did you see the photo of the massive gator in Mississippi, 741 pounds? I showed it to you?
You showed it to me last night after we got off.
That's right.
That doesn't look like an alligator. That looks like a prehistoric dinosaur.
You know, but it's crazy. That's not even the world record or U.S. record. The biggest one was in Texas, and it was over 800 pounds.
How long do you think an 800-pound gator has been alive?
They said the one in Texas was anywhere from 30 to 50 years old. 50 years old. Those things live to be over 100, don't they?
I mean, I feel like they lived older than that. I mean,
and alligators survived the dinosaur extinction. They say they survived because they learned to eat anything. A gator will eat. It doesn't care what it eats. It'll eat it live. It'll eat it dead. It has no preference for food. It'll take whatever it can eat. That's why it'll eat you.
And they don't have to eat but once every 3 months to survive.
Yeah.
Because they're lazy animals, they float around all day and they don't really do nothing.
So I guess the rule is here, if you want to survive the next zombie apocalypse, you have to learn to eat anything.
Besides zombies,
which I understand you are proficient here in the zombie apocalypse and believe that you will survive.
Yeah, definitely will survive. So unless I get infected immediately. If I'm laying in bed and then you're turned into a zombie somehow and you come in there and eat me.
All right, so give me your top 3 things to survive the zombie apocalypse. Hold on a minute.
First thing I would do is I would go to the biggest supply warehouse I could find. So in Statesboro, I live about half a mile from the Walmart.
All right, but you're not in Statesboro, you're here. So the zombie apocalypse hits tomorrow.
Zombie apocalypse happens. It hits tomorrow. All right. First thing I do is I grab the 3 or 4 guns we have here.
Wait a minute. What am I doing?
Hopefully you're not infected.
How are you grabbing my guns?
Are you? Well, 2 of them are mine. So whatever. Anyhow, so I grab. If you're alive, then I get everybody that's alive. We form a team, and we get our guns, and we strike out. You have to keep your truck on half full at all times. You can never get to below half full.
So if I go out in your truck right now, it's half full?
Yes.
Okay. But mine isn't.
No, not at all. We ran out of gas pulling into the driveway. It locked up. But anyhow, so I get in my truck, and I go to a place that's probably not extremely packed, right? So the Walmart distribution center, there's probably about maybe 200 people working there at the most, if I'm in Statesboro. But since I'm here, I go to Frank's Yardmaster because I know nobody's in there, right? There's probably 3 employees at all times there. And then I just load up on ammunition.
You hope Frank getting
a zombie. Because I shoot him right in the head.
Right.
Booyah! Because at that point, you can't look at somebody like they're human. Well, you can't look at them like they're somebody that you know.
So basically, you get all the ammunition you can get, and then where do you go? That's number one. Get all the ammunition.
All the ammunition I get, and I got my dog in the truck too, because dogs are good lookouts. And then I get all the ammunition I can get, and at that place they have plants and stuff. So you grab a couple plants, seeds or whatnot for when you need to start surviving off the land.
He's landscape plants. He don't have anything to eat.
No, there's got to be something in there. Anyhow, so I do that, right? Then I go...
Do you steal an RV?
No, because but I don't know exactly where one... If I come across an RV, I scoop that up. But so then the next thing I do is I go to a small convenience store where I know there's not a lot of people that go there. And this is out in the boondocks. This is that convenience store out in the middle of nowhere, right? Where there'd have to be zombies just literally on top of it. But they're in the middle of nowhere. They're spread out so far. So I would go to Melvin's, right? Melvin's out on Old Savannah Road. I would steal all the non-perishable items. Well, it wouldn't be stealing. I would just take all the non-perishable items that are still there, all the beer I could find. I mean, because you got to have beer, you got to have something to lift you up.
Okay.
You know, and then I just strike out into the middle of nowhere.
All right. So excuse me now. Let me cut you off a minute. So if you're not here, if you're on the West Coast, you're in Colorado, instead of stealing, the second thing you're going to do is you're going to go and get all the chips you can get and stop off at the Miracle Marijuana store and get all the pot you can get.
No, pot's completely different. And pot makes you paranoid. You start shooting shit in trees. The damn wind will blow.
And you'll have to eat all your chips, right?
Yeah.
You
so
eat stay away from the pot.
Stay away from the pot. Right. So and then I just go out in the middle of a field somewhere where I can see things coming, 200, 300, 400 yards away,
and hope you can wait it out. How long is it going to take?
Well, the zombie apocalypse is going to take a long time. But if I'm out in the middle of a field, one, I know how to hunt, and I got a ton of ammunition. So, and plus I would steal a bow and arrows, or a crossbow or some kind of thing like that. So. That way, I don't have to shoot guns off because,
then they hear it.
Then they'll hear it.
Then they hear it and come out.
Then they hear it and come that way. But, the guns are the last resort. But then you just start living off the land. You build small fires. You don't build huge fires because, fires attract things of all types. They don't keep zombies away. They keep animals away. And you just kind of wait it out and you just rough it. I mean,
I don't know what's crazy is that you've actually thought about this. Or you're really convinced the zombie apocalypse is going to happen.
It's going to happen. And it's not going to happen like the living dead. That your body, you can't die and just walk around. That's dumb. But like the movie I Am Legend, in I Am Legend, they weren't zombies. They were vampires because they only came out at night. And the reason why they
come out at night.
The reason why they got the movie I Am Legend is because he was the boogeyman at that point. He was the legend amongst the vampires because, he would go in there during the day and steal them to do his research. But, it's going to happen in that kind of atmosphere. It's going to happen where there's some kind of miracle drug or some kind of something comes out and, people are going to be taking it all the time. And the next thing you know, bam, zombie apocalypse. But it's not going to be living dead. It's going to be, crazy rabid people.
Basically one of these
pharmaceutical companies are going to start.
Yeah, something that we've tried to eradicate, smallpox, or something that just morphs into something else.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Okay.
And what really freaks me out is like The Walking Dead. If you've ever watched that, it's a great show. Those zombies are slow. Those zombies are cool. I would survive until I died from natural causes in that zombie apocalypse. But the zombie apocalypse, like World War Z, where those friggers are fast, no. I would catch Adrian Peterson zombie or something, and, he'd run me down in a heartbeat.
Done.
Because those zombies would still have the cardiovascular system of a human. They would just be crazy, crazy type. They'd just be crazy people that bite you, and then you would be infected. So that's the plan, is to raid a couple stores, where there's not a lot of people. Get out to the middle of nowhere in an open space where I can see things coming from me from a far distance, and just rough it and survive.
Well, I'm glad you've got a plan.
I got a plan. So when it happens, you better be hoping you're around me.
I'll check you out. So I'm glad we'll.
You get a generator, so you still have the simple things in life, or the good things in life that we cherish today, like movies.
There won't be any cable TV.
No, well, there won't be no cable, but you can still have movies, and we could take our favorite movies and stuff. So you have a little.
We'll have to take those 3 movies, I guess.
You have a little quiet Honda generator, and next thing you know, you're having a good time watching TV outside and enjoying the wildlife.
Well, I guess zombies is a good way to segue into Anthony Weiner because he's just become a political zombie. He in the recent election, is anybody surprised? He only got 5% of the vote.
So would you call that an average percent?
I don't know, but I don't know, Anthony. But your wiener just got smaller there.
That's what I mean. No, an average. They say average
5%. Yeah,
so.
I'm assuming you're done with politics.
Hey, and if there's some noise, this mic stand just broke on me. So
again,
yeah. Well, I'm just kind of holding it up. Hey, our silent guest just walked in.
And, the good thing about it, we don't have to worry about him saying anything and disrupting our show, do we?
Not at all. He walked in just as quiet as he could be.
Just as quiet as he could be. Hey, speaking of quiet, and there I go again with my speaking of.
Speaking of.
Tell me who's going to be on the Super Bowl halftime show.
Bruno Mars. Locked out of heaven. So if you're locked out of heaven, does that automatically make you go to hell?
Not unless you... I don't know. Why would you say that? Because we're locked out of heaven.
I ain't locked out of heaven. Just speak for yourself, buddy.
Well, I see the silent guest brought us a much prettier guest.
Where?
This is radio.
Where?
This is radio, and you can't see her, but I can see her in the window.
That's weird.
I know that's weird.
You're peeping through a window?
I'm peeping through a window, seeing her behind me. Isn't that weird?
What is she doing behind you? She's standing right next to me.
I know, and you don't want to look over there, do you? Yeah.
Bruno Mars been locked out of heaven. I think that's a good thing because for a while, the Super Bowl has been having these old people on like you.
Oh, dude, come on. Who are you talking about?
They had Bruce Springsteen's not bad, and then they had The Who, and ever since that whole booby popping out, because, whatever.
Speaking of Justin Timberlake.
Yeah, they've just went to
pulling out boobies. Can we have a booby mishap in the radio studio here, in our podcast studio?
There's a tit out. There's a tit out. It's a hairy tit.
I'm so glad I'm looking the other way, too. Yeah, silent Ron.
But I think it's a good idea. I think Bruno Mars is going to put on, and they say he puts on a great show. I mean, the dude can sing. He's pretty good. So I'll enjoy it.
Well, I'm glad you will. So
you don't think you'll like it? Quit saying
I know,
speaking.
So, I don't ever watch halftime shows. Really, I don't.
So you didn't see the nipple?
I didn't see the nipple.
But you Googled it, didn't you pervert?
I wasn't that crazy about seeing Janet Jackson's nipple. I hate to say that.
What? That'd be like seeing Michael pulling his titty out. They look just alike. Except one's a little darker.
Yeah, one's a little darker, right? No, I didn't really care to see Janet's nipple.
Well, I Googled it.
I bet you did several times.
I was. You know what the crazy thing about when the nipple popped out? I was actually watching the halftime show at a church lock-in. And we was watching that, and the tip popped out.
And you couldn't rewind it. You was pissed.
No,
right?
I couldn't rewind.
You couldn't. There's no rewind button.
But I remember everybody there was just like, "What just happened? What just happened?" I was like, "A titty just came out."
Yeah,
that's just what.
If you've got to ask what just happened, it wasn't that big a deal.
Well, no, but when you Google it though, I mean, you can see it had she had a
pasty.
sun.
She had a pasty.
No, it wasn't a pasty. It was a ring, brother. It was a ring, it's like a sun, and it showed the nipple in the middle. I mean, she was freaky.
Well, she's a Jackson. What do you expect?
Whatever. Jackson 5.
Jackson 5. All right, well, we'll end the show with the nipple just like we always do.
Nothing wrong with ending with a lady boner.
You know what I'm disappointed with is the special guest that our silent guest brought in didn't come in with a lady boner.
Yo, I love lady boners.
And I would expect with me and you in here, that should have been like an automatic response.
Automatic.
What's her problem?
Hey, here's this. Here's the conversation that went down. Where are we going? We're going back there to sneak in on the podcast with my brother and my stepdad. Oh, really? And they should have been immediately, boom.
I know.
Lady boner.
Lady boner. Well, listen, we hope you had a good time. And
hey, is that like the music in the award shows when they tell me to quit talking?
Yeah, that's it.
Can I just Ron Burgundy it and say, turn the music off? I'm still talking.
You can, but since I'm controlling the board, I'll cut your microphone off.
Okay. I can go through hell all by myself. All wrapped up in broken dreams. I've been down and in between. Seen hell more than twice. Been through the tunnel, never saw the light. Danced with the devil to the morning sun. Learned to never trust no one. So what's left? I can go through hell all by myself.
Hey, silent guest, do you know what it feels like to have to pee really, really bad? Come visit me and see if I got to, because I've got to piss.